What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's the good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here. We got to hear from Darren Mougey in his pre-draft press conference before the draft officially kicks off. And there was a lot to take away from this, a lot that I really enjoyed hearing from him as it pertains to his draft philosophy, the building of the big board, and then, of course, him touching on a few other key events. So I do want to start off with that. For one, you see Darren Mougey acclimating a little bit to how Aaron Glenn expects the business to run, right? There was a little bit of a disconnect the last time we heard from both of them where Darren Mougey just absolutely penciled in Justin Fields as the starter. And even though Aaron Glenn kind of, reciprocated that same sentiment, he expounded on that a little bit more by defining, yes, he's a starter on paper, but he still has to go out and earn the job. So this go around, when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, and we know that he went on the Pat McAfee show, ended up kind of trying to shoot Aaron Glenn and company in the foot about him flying out, 6 hours or so to come and have this conversation to see about the future, just for Aaron Glenn to walk in within a couple of minutes after grabbing Darren Mougey and telling him, we're going to look at other alternatives and move forward without you. So to see that they're in lockstep now, this is an issue. This is an event that we've seen Aaron Glenn consistently, not with Aaron Rodgers specifically, right, but with conversation topics he doesn't want to spend time on or doesn't care to really dive into. He lets them know, here's what I'm willing to give you. Otherwise, move on. And you've seen Darren Mougey start to pick up that as well, where twice we've seen him mention he prefers to speak specifically about the draft and any current Jets personnel. So I love that, especially because it always felt like, not always, the first meeting or two felt like he was much more comfortable just addressing draft, evaluation topics, cap space, different things of that nature. When it came to any of the personal relationships or what's going on with players and anything that could spark controversy, he seemed a little bit more timid. So I think you're starting to see a little bit of that calmness wash over as he realizes Aaron Glenn can really handle a lot of that up front, and he just needs to convey the same kind of messaging. Now, for our big three, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, he did say that he anticipates extending or picking up the fifth-year option for all three guys. And I think it ranges anywhere from 20 million or so for Sauce Gardner to about 13 million or so for Jermaine Johnson. So you are talking about a pretty significant pickup, but I think it's easy to make the case for all three of these guys, right? Sauce Gardner, and obviously all of the accolades he has, back-to-back all pros. Garrett Wilson's been a consummate pro for the most part, and having, again, I think the hardest triple 1,000-yard seasons over the last couple of years. And then with Jermaine Johnson, he obviously was able to take a huge significant leap when he had that healthy year 2 years ago. And I think he really just embraces everything Aaron Glenn will look for in a New York Jets football player. So happy to see that there's not going to be any early controversies there, and we'll see what a potential extension conversation looks like post-draft, which he mentioned this in his last press conference anyways. But one thing he did speak on was the fact that he expects to keep a lot of that in-house. So until we actually get an announcement, I don't know if there's going to be a ton of information or details that we hear about it, other than maybe conversations have started. But for the most part, I'm not worried about it. I think these are the kind of guys that for a year one GM walking into the building, you know what you're getting as long as they buy into the program. These are guys that you're going to find a way to get a deal done. And for anybody that doesn't think that we can pick up all three, the Eagles are putting on a clinic. I feel like they've handed out 6 or 7 large extensions this year. So I'm not worried anymore about this getting done if Darren Mougey feels like these are guys that he can build around and can be the future of the team, a core part of what he envisions this future team looking like with Aaron Glenn. It's going to happen. And then Rick Spielman, they talked about him being retained, what that looked like for Darren Mougey. He did explain that he did have to kind of lobby to bring Rick Spielman in because he did have other offers. And it's intriguing to me just because I listened to the CBS podcast that Rick Spielman was on, and he kind of repeated often enough that, he's living on an island, he's chilling, he does a podcast here and there. He's basically living the good life, right? Doesn't want to have to dive back into that GM seat necessarily and deal with all of the craziness that happens with it. So to see the turnaround is an interesting piece to me because I feel like that's just another, data point or an indicator that speaks to the buy-in for outside people looking in on Aaron Glenn, Darren Mougey turning this organization around and how he can contribute, which a lot of that I think is just the experience standpoint. And then also, again, all of the connections that he has. So when it comes especially to like draft, you're looking at day three guys, you're wanting to pick the brain of coaches or personnel members that are around some of these guys, right? Or for people that have legal issues and all this other kind of stuff, you can lean heavily into Rick Spielman's 20, 30 plus years of experience there to really kind of help give you a advantage if possible. Now, the biggest piece, and this is kind of what I wanted to wrap up this conversation on, is he did go I don't want to say a little bit or heavily, but he talked on essentially draft philosophy for himself and kind of piecing together what a big board looks like. And for Darren Mougey, in at least this year one process, they have positional breakdown meetings. So he talked about the running back coach or the linebacker coach or QB coach, et cetera, coming up. They're going to go down every, I'm assuming, draftable guy for them, go down the list, rank these guys. That's going to consist of breaking down film, hearing what they're talking about, et cetera, and they're going to piece it together. So they're not looking at things in terms of here's the top 10 guys that we're seeing, and then we start just breaking down random guys and slotting them in. They're doing this based on position and then throwing this on a big board, which is intriguing to me because I think there is a lot more nuance in tackling it that way. But from an organizational standpoint, it's a lot cleaner of a process to kind of put something together like that, because then you can go based off positional need, you can go based off blue chips and some of these different tags, kind of as you heard him mention, where you have more of a emphasis on these particular areas. Then he talked about bringing in the performance team, right, or the Atlantic Health and Training Performance Department, whatever it's called. But they're going to come in, they're going to review players that have medical tags attached to them, talk about what, I'm assuming this is kind of how it goes. They talk about what the injury is, what the general kind of diagnostic or prognostication around it should be, timelines, etc., healing, what their plan would be, assuming we want to roll with this player, and then comfortability level. This is an injury that we've seen plenty, we feel comfortable with, we can address. This is one where we might need to consult outside parties, specialists, etc. And then Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey will say, this is worth our time, this isn't worth our time. And then some of these guys will, of course, have that special designation. And I'm assuming we're not specifically looking at these guys unless they are generally considered blue chips, or these end up being value selections for us elsewhere. And like Josh Simmons will be a name that comes to mind if you don't go OT early, and maybe he's there for you at the top of day two. Then they bring in, he mentioned like security, but basically legal checks, anybody that has any pending, ongoing, or maybe even previous run-ins with the law, etc. They really want to dive into that, understand what it is, what happened, go back to the position coaches, etc., and see if there was visits or anything that was held, anybody that's maybe spoken to that and feels comfortable with what occurred, the learning lessons from it, or is this going to be an ongoing consistent problem? And then finally, they go back into film review. So after already diving heavily into all of these guys and then stacking them up, going through the medicals, going through the legality issues, then you go back into the film. And this is where I think as he was wrapping up, he was mentioning maybe overthinking certain things. This is where you start diving back into it and figuring out, here's some things that we feel like separate some closely graded guys outside of measurables. And he did speak about that kind of being a tiebreaker, more of a case by case basis, but definitely in the common sense of how we determine these things. If you have two very closely graded guys, if we're talking tackles, the guy that has the longer arm length is going to be the guy that you probably end up going with in a flip of the coin type situation. And then lastly, he did talk about, someone raised a good question about what has it looked like when Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey have disagreed on maybe the evaluation on certain players. And it was very loose, right? But he essentially talked about, they go back to the film. You just end up diving deeper, right? Maybe there's certain plays that you want to look at. Maybe there's a certain play style or demeanor that you're looking for. And I had just it's funny to me because I just watched the draft day movie from like 2014 or whatever it was. So in my head, I kind of have that playing in real time as they was asking that question. And you're going back to maybe find that one specific play, or maybe one that indicates a bunch of different plays in terms of, this is the guy that really embraces what it means to be a New York Jet, versus this is a guy that has the characteristics and the physicality, maybe the skill set that we're looking for, that's a little bit more advanced than this guy, but this is the person that's going to identify with the persona that we want to be perceived, right, by outside sources. So I find this very intriguing. I can't wait. What are we, 3 days away from the NFL draft? I feel like we've been talking about a lot of these things forever. I just want to see what a Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey draft class looks like at this point. I'm so pumped up for it. I don't remember. I got to look at the times, but I might finally do like a draft day party or something like that. So we'll see. But let me know what you guys think from the press conference. What nuggets that you picked up on? Is there anything I'm missing? And I'll catch you guys again. Appreciate the support as always. Peace.